Today's topic is about the painfulness of parenting parts, which was inspired by the comment section, so I'm very grateful to all of you who take the time to leave a comment. Welcome to AuDHDID, a channel dedicated to autism, ADHD and dissociative identity disorder. I'm going to answer this first from the perspective of the adult self who's fronting, or even maybe a smaller part who's taken on the responsibility for adulting. It's really natural to have a not fair response. If we think about it, we often didn't get a great example of parenting, and taking responsibility for other parts' stuff sucks, especially when they're asking for something that we didn't get. And that's the pain that we actually are feeling. It's a grief that needs to be acknowledged for all parts. Even the ones who had idealized versions of our parents will grieve when they start to interact with the parts of us who got the bad version of the parent. For us, there was a lot of jealousy, anger, longing and envy, especially when we saw people in the outside world playing with their children. It was like the world was showing us what we never had. This is a really hard topic, so if you need to pause and take breaks, please do. This work takes time and this video will be here when you need it. So it's bigger than the grief. There are practical elements too, and neurodivergent traits to consider as well. So let's break down what might be underneath this feeling. You might not relate to all of them, and it might be that those you don't relate to now will come up for you later. First, I'll focus on taking responsibility for other parts' actions. The most practical issue here is that we might actually have no idea what parts may or may not have done due to the amnesia. We might find out when someone tells us, usually because they're accusing us of doing something wrong or acting weird. And if you don't know if they're a safe person, it might not always be a viable option to disclose that another part was fronting. The only real way to improve this is to work on inner communication. We had a system journal and post-it notes around the house for important things. We also had to promise them that if they told us about something they've done that we wouldn't like, I wouldn't get angry. The next part of the not fair feeling is their actions might not feel like ours, so why would we want to take responsibility for their actions, needs or wants? There was this Mel Robbins video that I watched a really long time ago. I think it might have been her TED talk on the 5-second rule, and she mentioned that adulthood is parenting ourselves. It seemed so obvious when she said it, but it honestly never occurred to me because it's not something I'd seen modelled to me as a child. And I think that helped me feel less annoyed at my DID and my parts, because I realised it's something that I'd have to do even without the trauma. And I think that helped the adult me to not resent the idea of parenting so much. It didn't make doing it any easier, but it did help with my resistance. Then once I'd accepted the responsibility, I realised that seeing the need and negotiating how we met it actually gave me as the adult part more control, because instead of the parts acting out trauma responses, they started to ask for help. And there were far less situations where I had to take responsibility for consequences in the outside world, or harm to the body, or walk around with a really dodgy hair colour attempt. Thanks, Charlie. So until we've processed that grief and the pain, the resistance will stay as a reminder of the hurts needing to heal. I know I just wanted it all to go away, but the more I resisted, the more it persisted. Acceptance of the pain was the first part of the grief, and the rest of the steps, being angry about what I never had and so on, came afterwards. And if we then consider neurodivergence on top of this, we potentially have demand avoidance and that counter will response of, no, I can't do it because you asked me to do it, which we have to navigate. And then we have memory issues and staying focused as an adult part, finishing tasks. Sometimes parts talking can be distracting and increase inattentiveness in ADHD. And then we have the shock of the change in what we thought had happened versus what did happen, and disorientation from the state shift from child to adult if it's literally just happened, which I know all systems have, but the inertia can make it take longer for us to navigate when you're neurodivergent. So I personally still struggle with this, even though I have co-consciousness with my parts. The next thing that came up for me was that I didn't feel equipped for the job. And that was a lot of executive functioning to work out how to parent on top of all the other daily life functioning that I had to do. So now we've talked about the grieving, which will help relieve the pain in time. I've made other videos about demand avoidance, breaking things down so small that it'd be ridiculous not to do them, having a system journal to increase the communication and reduce those difficult surprises, and another practical issue was me literally having no clue what they needed. So in my journey almost 12 years ago, there wasn't a lot of resources on DID and parenting littles. I actually watched this amazing child development lecture on attachment by Dr. Alan Shaw, and he talked about how attachment develops and at what stages, and it really helped me see what we didn't get. And I spent a few years trying to give my parts those restorative experiences, like making routine so life felt predictable rather than chaotic, giving them a calm environment at home, cleaning up, regular meal times so they knew that food and water was available. And all of these things have helped them feel less scared and also have an opportunity to see that I am not like my parents. It helped to consider our routine as a parenting tool rather than productivity tool as well. It's not a should do to get things done, but something that I genuinely do to show love and gratitude to my parts for all those years they held my needs so that I would be able to connect to them again one day. And it's really big thing that they have been very brave for me, and I don't want to underestimate that. It also helped with my sense of rejection and feeling like nothing I did was good enough. That general overwhelm of there being so many needs and wants was easier to navigate when I was equipped with information. Much later in recovery, I noticed that I would fawn and people please external people, and that in doing so, I actually neglected my own parts, and they would rebel against this fawning because it unfortunately hurt them a lot, and I had to process that grief also. If I hadn't have listened to them, I never would have seen what needed to change. I found deciding how we wanted to do life together, sharing the body and time fronting really helped. I found simple things like stuffies, colouring and Lego really comforted the little ones. It gave them an incentive to engage and have different needs met. And it also reduced them trying to attach to other adults in my life and creating unhealthy boundaries. We have covered a lot of ground today, and I don't want to overwhelm you, so I'm going to leave it here for now. But you can always comment below and if there's something else that you'd like me to cover. And until next time, take care of yourselves.